Hello and welcome to Regionally Speaking. Today our program is a very interesting one and a very exciting one with great meaning for all of you who are listening. The title is Challenges of Providing Educational Access and Quality Education. Our speakers today include Lori Urakdi Eiler, a 33-year East Cleveland social studies teacher at Shaw High School, and M. Vora Perry, an East Cleveland resident, mother, wife, neighborhood activist, author, editor, and publisher. Now you all understand why I say we are very fortunate to have them here today. Lori Eiler, I'd like to begin with you. From your vantage point as a longtime social studies high school teacher, how would you assess educational access over the time period of your tenure at Shaw High School?
Well, I guess it depends on how we define educational access. What I've gotten better at doing over my tenure at Shaw High School is to make sure that educational opportunities are in front of my students. I used to think when I was young that education would come to them or opportunities would come to them, and I've learned to bring opportunities to them rather than waiting for people to find us, so to speak. I've also taught students that when opportunities do come by, I tend to look at it like being a surfer. Whatever wave of opportunity or access comes our way, that we should ride it, whether it's a little one or a big one. And if it's a tsunami, we should learn to ride that too. So things have changed more on our perspective, and with more networking and more good people finding out about the great kids that we have in East Cleveland, the more that we've allowed our kids to be able to interact and get the education that they deserve. Because every child deserves a fabulous education regardless of where they reside.
All right. Vora, how about you? That question, yes, I'll be happy to. From your, as a parent and a longtime resident of East Cleveland, how would you assess educational access in the several ways you have been engaged in the process as an activist, an author, editor, and publisher?
Well, I really appreciate what Lori said in terms of, how did you put it, taking advantage of whatever opportunities arise. And especially as a parent, what I've really tried to do is really be an advocate for my children. And in as much as I could as a parent for all of the children. So I would often just go right to our superintendent, Mrs. Corley, to let her know what my concerns were as a parent. For a minute, about a year or two ago, I was considering running for school board, and I actually filed a petition to do that and got signatures to do that. And in the process of discovering what school board members actually had to do, I concluded that I would, especially because I still had children in the district, that I would be more effective as a citizen, as a resident, because there are certain restrictions on school board members. And I wanted to have free access to do whatever I thought needed to be done without any additional restrictions. There are enough restrictions that exist already. So I've really, in terms of my own children, have had to be an advocate and
Yes.
Look for opportunities. I've been really fortunate when I hear things either from other parents or from reading or from the internet, jumping on those opportunities. So I've kind of really put together what I call an a la carte education for them. And I often say, of my parents, I had wonderful parents, but I went to school for education. I have a degree in education. So I learned certain things in terms of what my rights were as a parent, what my children's rights were as students, that I think probably the average parent doesn't know. And so I've said before many times, if my parents, my mother especially, because she was a homemaker, primarily responsible for being at our schools when necessary and all that kind of thing, if she had to do what I had to do, my family would have fallen through the cracks. And I have 4 brothers and sisters who have gone on to get their college degrees, advanced degrees. I don't think that a lot of things would have happened if she had to do what I do, simply because she wouldn't have known. And so one of the things I really want to address is getting information out to parents, because a lot of things parents don't do is simply because they don't know. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Yeah, it does. It answers it, but there's more to the story because of the kinds of publishing you're doing. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I initially got into publishing without intending to do that. I've been practicing Nichiren Buddhism since 1987. And my husband and I have 3 children. Our youngest was born in 95, so she's 15 now. We have a 14-year-old and we have a 12-year-old. So when the 15-year-old was in school, younger, I guess probably going into kindergarten, first grade, it concerned me that there weren't any books about Buddhist kids. And sometimes, kids would pick on her or my other kids about their religion. And we're Black, African-American, deeply rooted in African-American experience, and we're Buddhist. But there were no books to address that. And I just felt like that was a gap. So initially, I published my first book for that reason, to fill that gap, and started my company that way. And I went on to revise it and learn more and more about the children's writing profession and join professional organizations. I've been the marketing coordinator for the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators, Northern Ohio chapter. SCBWI is an international organization, and just learned more about the craft. So in doing that, was able to get a publisher besides myself to publish a longer version of my original book, a novel, which is set in East Cleveland. So, and it not only addresses Buddhism, but a big part of it is just bullying, which kids always, from when I was little, from when you were little, it's a never ending thing. It's the whole bullying piece. So, other writing I do is, I don't know if you're aware that I write for the Neighborhood Voice newspaper,
yes,
the Greater University Circle Neighborhood Voice newspaper, which I think is a wonderful vehicle for empowering us residents of this whole greater Cleveland area to get our own stories out, to write about the things that are interesting to us, to inform the public, and hopefully through this information, more changes can be made as people, again, become aware, not only in terms of education, but in terms of so many of the other issues that plague our region, of how we as individual citizens can make a difference.
Mm-hmm. Well, back to Lori now, because I would like to have you talk more about the very imaginative things that you are doing with students that, in my view, speak to educational access.
Well, I wanted to comment on what Ms. Perry
said
about bullying. Our students took that as part of their charge. One of the things that we do at Shaw High School is Facing History and Ourselves, which is a nonprofit that was started actually in Boston, which is similar to you. It was a teacher who started something because there was a void, and she created something that is now universal. It teaches students to be what's called an upstander, someone who's, when a perpetrator is victimizing someone, doesn't stand by, but to be an upstander. That's a term they coined. And it would have helped the Perry family if more students at that time had really known about what they were really doing when they were, speaking words or not understanding people who were different than themselves. Our students actually went into the elementary schools as high schoolers, and they're actually now part of a documentary that's used nationally. It's called Not in Our School, which was created to stop bullying, and other schools actually are copying it and doing the same thing. So and it was actually a response to a Plain Dealer article that they read in my class as 10th graders and were shocked at what had happened at a neighboring school, and they said they need to do something about it. So things have changed, and I would say that students, what we're trying to do now is really empower students with the knowledge and skills to be star players in their communities and in their schools and in the world. And through different types of educational access through different programs that they're creating themselves as well as interacting with others. They are becoming those star players and making a better world, not just, down the street or in the elementary next door or in the halls of Shaw High School, but also nationally. We have international guests now that visit us on a regular basis through the Greater Cleveland Council for World Affairs. And those guests from the State Department have said each time that Shaw High School is the best place they visited in America because of what we teach them and the love that we show them. And I think that speaks volumes of how we've grown through educational access.
Yes, that was the story I wanted you to tell. And when we first sat down and were talking, I was asked by Lori, what do I mean by educational access? And we talked a little bit about it, and that's why this question now has been so fully answered by both of you. But the conversation that we had earlier was what triggered the excitement in me and the hope for exactly what you both have said. So, well, being as imaginative as you are in what you're doing, what are there obstacles that you face in doing these things? I know you talk to your principal, and I'm sure you also do the same thing. And how does it work? I mean, how do you get this to happen? How is it that you're succeeding as well as you are? How do you explain it?
Now, can you clarify succeeding in what realm? Because as I told you, I'm a wife, I'm a mom. So can you just clarify for me what you're talking about?
Well, what I'm saying is, as you go about doing all of these things, this requires a lot of skill on your part in working with people. So you turn out to be examples for students for the way you go about doing things, so that in your instruction of them, they're learning about how to go about and do it. Because what I'm hearing is this activism that you are encouraging on the part of the students with whom you're coming in contact. That's what I'm talking about. And you can talk, back and forth about this as you have conversationally, because that's what this is. It is a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Well, I will say, although I'm not a classroom teacher, I've been a substitute, but I've nowhere near approach what Lori does. I do workshops as with young audiences of Northeast Ohio, which sends artists into schools to do workshops. So, and then just in my writing in general, which is for young adults and children, and also for adults. What I believe is that you can really do anything you set your mind to, as long as you don't quit when an obstacle happens. And so through everything I do, I try to communicate that message, that the real key is to not give up. And so it comes through in my writing, it comes through with whatever I do, because that's just really a core belief of mine, that the successful people are just the ones that kept going.
That's what I'm hearing. Lori?
Yeah, there's a poster in my room that says a quitter never wins and a winner never quits. And I think that what we can learn, and I've learned from the residents of East Cleveland and the colleagues that I teach with and our leaders in the school, is basically that we're all going to be challenged, over and over again, in every decade and every year and every day and every moment. And it's really how we respond to challenge that makes all the difference. And what I'm trying to do as a teacher, as a human being, is to teach people to be hurdlers, because we're all going to get stuff thrown in front of us. And sometimes the walls will be high thick and deep, but they're all doable. And by what we do, we send that message when we face challenges as well.
Excellent. We're going to take a break now, and then when we come back, we're going to be talking about another very interesting subject, and that is quality education. Be back soon.